A Nevada National Guardsman with a stellar military career chose to become a whistleblower and revealed a devastating personal secret. But instead of help, she says the Guard turned on her. Thank you so much for staying with us on Channel 13 Live at 6:30. I'm Abel Garcia. It's an all too familiar scenario, according to military legal experts and veteran advocates. 13 Chief Investigator Darcy Spears exposes a downfall of a Guardsman and a family search for answers.
Tonight, we begin a new community commitment, Guarding the Guardsmen, telling the stories of those who serve our country but are cast aside when they need help. The Nevada National Guard calls the case of Sergeant First Class Allison Bailey, quote, complex and extremely sad, end quote. Her family believes she paid the ultimate price for military disorder.
What happened to Sergeant First Class Allison Bailey should not have happened.
When I met with her, she was a broken woman.
Allison Bailey heard the call of duty before she was legally old enough to answer it.
I had to sign for her to go in. She spent the next almost 17 years in the Nevada Army National Guard, half of her life.
During her service, she became a mother to 2 boys while rising through the ranks on a stellar career path.
She was an outstanding, highly decorated E7. Wonderful reviews.
Documented as a natural-born leader with unlimited potential who should be promoted ahead of her peers.
I can honestly say that Miss Bailey was a well-regarded member of the Nevada National Guard for more than a decade.
But the last 2 years of her time in the Nevada Guard redefined what she
I am proud of our service.
And her family knew the military to be.
I was the first female in our family. I have 5 brothers that served. And Allison was the first to join the Army. I was in the Air Force. We have 4 Air Force, 1 Navy, 1 Marine.
Doing what's right is drilled into those who serve, which is why Allison sought to right wrongs she encountered in her chain of command. In September of 2020, she initiated the process of filing an Inspector General complaint for bullying and a toxic work environment, telling her mother,
I should set the example for other soldiers to see that you can file a complaint and have it resolved.
Instead, the opposite happened when in January of 2021, the Nevada National Guard turned the tables, launching a misconduct investigation against Allison called an Article 15. She chronicled the process in a video diary.
That I attempted to initiate a IG investigation against her and her behavior towards me. And they still let her request and open a IG complaint against me, which is not right in any sense.
The Guard claims the 2 investigations were unrelated.
This Article 15 was based on EO complaints from subordinates of Miss Bailey that were filed through the Equal Opportunity Office.
Former JAG officer Dr. Dwight Sterling sees it differently.
I am shocked and horrified that the Nevada Guard treated a senior sergeant in this manner.
Sterling served in the California National Guard, teaches law at USC, and founded the nonprofit Center for Law and Military Policy.
When you have a military member who comes forward with what is essentially whistleblowing, with a claim of misconduct or wrongdoing, and they filed an action with the Inspector General, what is supposed to happen is a cone of protection is supposed to be placed over them, and there should be no adverse action, because they are now a protected party.
Instead of protection, Allison was placed under investigation for violations including showing disrespect toward a superior officer, failure to obey an order, mistreating subordinate soldiers, and making false statements.
What is most kind of telling to me is that there had been no accusations of this type until she brought forth her charges, until she blew the whistle.
Allison's story took a darker turn when she inadvertently disclosed a secret she held closely for several months to a mandatory reporter in the Guard, revealing that she'd been sexually assaulted twice by a fellow Guardsman in May and June of 2020. We are not naming that soldier because he was never charged with a crime.
My daughter never intended to come forward and tell anyone about that because she knew the way the military treated sexual assault. So she files the sexual assault complaint because she's told basically, you've made this comment to a mandatory reporter, you need to file or we will file.
Sex assault allegations in Nevada Guard units are referred out for investigation to the State Department of Public Safety. DPS received Allison's case on February 2nd of 2021.
They conduct, in my opinion, a partial investigation.
This DPS report shows the accused claimed the sex was consensual, and as proof, he provided screenshots he said were from a sexually charged text conversation with Allison. Detectives sought to authenticate the screenshots with the original text messages.
They asked the accused to voluntarily allow his phone to be checked. First he gives consent, and then he says, no, you know what, I don't want you to check my phone. So they get a search warrant. They secure his phone, but he does not give them the passcode to his phone.
DPS had to do a forensic download, which the report states was unable to recover the text messages between the accused and Bailey. Just over 4 months later, on June 9th, DPS closed the investigation, citing insufficient evidence for prosecution.
They just want you to shut up and go away.
Navy veteran Sandy Duhack is a military sex assault survivor and vice president of the nonprofit advocacy group Veteran Sisters.
So they said that this evidence wasn't good enough to convict him, but it was good enough to destroy her life and her career.
The Nevada Guard promoted the alleged attacker in September, 1 month after the DPS investigation was closed. The very same month, Allison's rank was reduced from E7 to E5, and she was ultimately demoted to E1.
To go from a senior sergeant to, a private, which is an E1, which is just a guy off the street or a woman off the street who take the oath and they're 18 years old. I mean, that's the lowest rank in the military.
The demotion essentially erased her years of service.
It is unheard of.
And marked the end of Allison's military career. In January, she was kicked out of the Nevada National Guard with an other than honorable discharge for what they deemed a pattern of misconduct, including engaging in inappropriate relationships with multiple junior soldiers.
Say that she got kicked out because of an inappropriate relationship with, I'm not going to say his name, but with the man that you're talking about. That's factually not true.
A final Nevada Guard document in Allison's misconduct case, which lays out the basis for separation, lists 22 allegations. Number 1 is sex with a subordinate soldier, naming the very man Allison had accused of rape. It also claims Allison was guilty of multiple counts of 5 violations, including disrespect of superior officer, cruelty and maltreatment of subordinates, and disorder prejudicing good order and discipline. The Guard alleges Allison was sexually harassing multiple lower-ranked soldiers and that she often arrived to work late, left early, would not show up to work, and did not do her job. We spoke to the military attorney assigned to defend Allison. He resigned from the Nevada National Guard over how Allison's case and some others he worked on were handled. In an appeal filed on Allison's behalf, the attorney argued she was never put on notice or given warnings for the allegations against her. He wrote, "It has always been the hallmark of these kinds of actions in the Nevada Guard that counseling precede punishment. The failure to follow that course of action in this case is inexcusable."
The last video she sent me literally was, "Mom, I'm going to spend the rest of my life working on this because it's wrong."
But the rest of Allison's life came much too soon.
She died on March 4th, 6 weeks after her discharge.
Her boys, 15-year-old Colby and now 11-year-old Caleb, found their mother collapsed on the floor in their Las Vegas home.
They're trying to figure out why they miss their mom. So
Allison's death was preceded by a steep and swift mental and physical decline that was due in part to confusion about her access to health care. As our coverage continues in the coming weeks, we take an in-depth look at the factors that contributed to her downward spiral. Darcy Spears, 13 Investigates.
And tonight we continue our coverage we're calling Guarding the Guardsmen, with more on the story of a Nevada National Guardsman and rising military member who wanted to blow the whistle, claiming a toxic work environment.
Yeah, but she was investigated and faced nearly 24 allegations of misconduct before being demoted and discharged. 13 Chief Investigator Darcy Spears dives into the depths of a female soldier's downward spiral.
That's right, revealing what insiders call a systemic problem with a devastating ripple effect.
As a mother, the most difficult stories for me to report are the ones where I sit down with a parent who lost their child. Such is the case with Sergeant First Class Allison Bailey. Allison served her country for nearly 2 decades. Her life ended a few weeks after she was discharged from duty, thrown out of the reserves over claims she harassed fellow soldiers.
There are no words. Losing a child, there are no words.
Felicia Kavanaugh recently had to find words.
As many of you know, I'm Allison's mother.
In a setting no mother should ever have to face.
Allison was born here in Las Vegas at Nellis Air Force Base 34 years ago.
Allison's service record was nearly impeccable. Her reviews outstanding all the way through September of 2019, where she was noted to far exceed the expected standard. That changed around the time she attempted to initiate an Inspector General complaint in September of 2020, alleging bullying and a toxic work environment in her unit. Just 4 months later, a misconduct investigation was launched, but it was against her.
She filed complaints, and she was swiftly retaliated against.
In her digital diary, she appears distressed and distraught as she makes what proved to be an eerie prediction.
This is killing me. I mean, mentally, physically, everything. It's killing me.
During the misconduct investigation against Allison and her attempt to file that IG complaint, a secret was revealed, something Allison said she'd been afraid to talk about for fear of retaliation.
During the course of a conversation between her and her equal opportunity advisor, who's a mandatory reporter, she disclosed that there had been a sexual assault.
2 alleged assaults by the same fellow guardsman. Nikki Randall was the response coordinator assigned to Allison's case through the military's Sexual Assault Prevention and Response Office, or SAPR. That's where a victim can ask for an expedited transfer to another unit and access other resources. But Allison claimed to her family and others she was not getting the support she needed.
I said, because they asked me about it, and, or did you have a person? And I said, well, yeah, I did, but it didn't last nearly a whole month.
Randall has a different story.
From my perspective, in the SAPR program, her case was handled appropriately. We did everything as an organization that we were supposed to do related to the sexual assault case.
That included offering services and resources to Allison. We asked for details, but the Guard declined to give any or provide documentation of their contacts with Allison, citing confidentiality. Department of Defense statistics from this 2022 report on sexual assault in the military show that most assault cases in the U.S. go unreported. Nevada National Guard Captain Emerson Marcus says that's changing.
And I will say that we have seen an uptick in reports. We consider this a good thing in the Nevada National Guard. We want people to feel comfortable coming forward about filing a sexual assault case.
There's nothing comfortable about it, says Navy veteran and sexual assault survivor Sandy Duchek.
Sergeant First Class Allison Bailey contacted Veteran Sisters.
Duchek is vice president of the nonprofit Veteran Sisters that helps military assault survivors.
When you're in the military and you're sexually assaulted, it's likely to be someone within your chain of command, and you have no recourse. You can't just leave.
After Allison reported the sexual assault in January of 21, Felicia says her daughter's career and life began unraveling under immense pressure and stress. Again, Allison had received outstanding reviews in her yearly evaluation since joining the Guard, but look at this one from the year between September of 2020 and 21. It includes the time span when she tried to file that IG report and the allegations of rape. In this evaluation, she was written up for allowing her personal issues to overshadow her performance and showing no effort to view her difficult situation as an opportunity to better her performance.
As clear-cut a case of retaliation that I've ever seen.
Chris Tinsman, Allison's military-appointed attorney.
She was a high flyer. She was universally regarded as one of the best in all of Southern Nevada.
He had contact with her multiple times, but when Allison became his client after the Nevada Guard accused her of misconduct,
she was not the same person that I had interacted with for several years prior to that. She was nervous, anxious, didn't trust anyone.
Her alleged assailant was investigated by the Nevada Department of Public Safety, but never prosecuted due to insufficient evidence.
Sexual assault is one of the most difficult crimes to prove.
Allison was disciplined for having sex with that subordinate soldier.
The military puts a lot of the weight of these kind of disciplinary actions on the superior NCO or officer in the case.
But Allison alleged the sex was not consensual and that she blacked out during both incidents.
I met with Allison about a month and a half before she died.
Former California Guard JAG officer Dr. Dwight Sterling.
This is the pattern that I've seen over and over again here, where the woman who brings, who comes forward with the charge, is really turned against.
Sterling teaches law at USC. He's also CEO of the Center for Law and Military Policy, which he founded to fight for service members' rights. Both Sterling and Department of Defense statistics say nationally, retaliation is the norm. A third of women in the U.S. military reporting sexual assault were discharged within a year. 24% of those women received a less than fully honorable discharge.
That will then, break the person so morally, spiritually, as well as physically, which is what happened to her.
On top of all that, Allison was suffering from serious medical issues.
She had a pancreatic mass, lesions, cysts. She was having seizures. She couldn't drive a car. She had metabolic acidosis, which is basically the blood in your veins turning to acid.
Military medical records from 2022 show she was also in treatment for anxiety and panic attacks, night terrors, depression, and insomnia. Allison was in the process of applying for a med board, which is a disability claim to get out of military service to focus on her health. It was denied in May of 2022. Allison's mother is troubled that the same system which denied the med board also ended Allison's career.
It was denied by the same people who chose her discipline and decided to kick her out with no health care, with no hope.
Throughout, the Nevada National Guard followed procedures in place, though, during Miss Allison Bailey's misconduct investigation, her subsequent sexual assault allegation, and the separation board made up of out-of-state military military officers.
Allison's other than honorable discharge in January cited what the Guard called a pattern of misconduct.
The problem here lies in the fact that the investigation that this whole thing was predicated on was faulty to the point of being completely unreliable.
As for the atmosphere when Allison was questioned,
I've been in some very contested cases with some very hot button issues. This was the most hostile I have seen any investigator be.
Allison died in March of this year, just 6 weeks after she was discharged. Her death certificate shows she died from acute cardiopulmonary arrest, meaning her heart and lungs failed due to multiple underlying conditions. And the other than honorable discharge had a significant ripple effect on what happened after Allison died.
She cannot be buried in the Veterans Cemetery. In fact, by their terms, she couldn't even have her military honors.
At her memorial service, friends from the Guard gave her those honors symbolically.
I will pursue the truth pertaining to Allison's unconstitutional treatment from the Nevada Army National Guard and do my utmost to hold the correct people accountable, no matter how long it takes.
As our coverage continues in the coming weeks, we'll hear about the congressional inquiry Allison's mother is pursuing, and we'll show you how some claim Nevada does not provide a level playing field for those who serve and are accused of misconduct. The Veteran Sisters Group is holding a candlelight vigil in honor of Allison Bailey on the Strip on Saturday, September 23rd at 8 p.m. We have details on our website. Their goal is to raise awareness about service members who claim they've suffered from retaliation. You can read this story and others in our series at ktnv.com/guardingtheguardsmen. Darcy Spears, 13 Investigates.
We depend on our military to protect our freedom and our fundamental rights, but 13 Investigates found some who serve don't always have the same protections. Thank you for staying with us here on Channel 13, live at 6:30. I'm Joe Mueller.
And I'm Tricia Keene. In our continuing series, Guarding the Guardsmen, Chief Investigator Darcy Spears hears from former military personnel, advocates, and military families about serious concerns of disorder instead of discipline.
Our series began with the life and untimely death of Sergeant First Class Allison Bailey.
To hear that a former member had died and so soon after getting out of the military remains a shock to the Nevada National Guard, the family, the friends, and so many in the organization.
Allison went from model soldier to being kicked out of the military. She died 6 weeks after she was discharged. You can see the details of her story at ktnv.com/guardingtheguardsmen. Tonight, our coverage continues with a new twist as military legal experts explain how Nevada law leaves those who serve at a disadvantage. When a soldier gets in trouble, discipline may follow, but due process should come first. That's a fundamental right for all of us, a right service members risk their lives to defend.
It is deeply disappointing and it's quite unconscionable.
Dr. Dwight Sterling is a former JAG officer with the California National Guard, and he teaches law at USC. Allison reached out to him for advice after she was discharged.
When I met with her, she was a broken woman, and she told me over and over again that it was the disgrace and the shame that that took place when the Nevada Guard made accusations and didn't give her a real trial.
After trying to blow the whistle over what she claimed was a bullying and toxic work environment in her unit, Allison found herself under investigation. She was eventually demoted and kicked out with an other than honorable discharge.
It's a situation where the Nevada National Guard can simply predetermine the winner and the loser in a case, and then can write a script that will manipulate the system in a way to get to that outcome.
It was all part of an administrative disciplinary process called an Article 15, which included nearly 24 allegations.
They were the kind of garden variety types of accusations that are frequently made against someone who blows the whistle, claims that they are a bad leader or that they were mean to me. Right? It's this kind of soft claims that are hard to kind of defend against.
Allison's military-assigned attorney, Chris Tinsman, questioned the entire process.
The complaints against Allison were from years past, to the point that there are some statute of limitations questions.
According to Tinsman, Allison wanted to mount a defense but wasn't fully equipped to do so. Nevada law prevents guardsmen from opting for a court-martial in lieu of the Article 15, often referred to as non-judicial punishment.
It's actually beneficial to the member.
Nevada National Guard spokesperson Captain Emerson Marcus.
A court-martial is for felony convictions. This did not rise to the level of a felony conviction.
But in Allison's separation memo, the guard characterized the charges against her as serious offenses under Nevada law, punishable as a court-martial may direct. Nearly 24 allegations against Allison included engaging in inappropriate relationships with multiple junior soldiers, disobeying orders and regulations, and not showing up for work or showing up late.
I cannot imagine a judge or a jury in the military context convicting her of the charges that she was convicted of kind of by her commander. It would have shocked me.
If she'd had a court-martial, she could have presented evidence like this to a judge and had it entered into the court record. Allison's mother, Felicia, has her daughter's phone, which contains a text conversation between Allison and her supervising major. Both note concerns about a subordinate guardsman Allison later accused of sexual assault. The major writing, "Please be careful. I've been a tad worried about you and him. Don't be alone." 3 months later, it would be this major that Allison tried to initiate an inspector general complaint against.
Without a whistleblower, there is no one to, call out your misconduct.
In 2015, Nevada legislators changed state law to provide all Nevada service members the right to opt for a court-martial.
The objective was to align the Nevada National Guard more with active duty military.
4 years later, the new law was reversed at the request of state military leadership. In 2019, Assembly Bill 37 was passed, striking the right to court-martial out of state law. We asked the Nevada National Guard for an on-camera interview with Adjutant General Andra Berry to explain why they wanted lawmakers to remove the right to court-martial. We also asked the Guard to describe the results since the reversal took effect. The Guard did not provide the general for an interview and did not answer our questions, instead referring us to lawmakers.
I'd like to open up the hearing on Assembly Bill 37.
We obtained video from the Nevada House Subcommittee when the bill was introduced.
The Office of the Military has found that the resources to conduct a court-martial are prohibitive and impracticable.
Not having a process for soldiers to have their day in court is just unacceptable on a constitutional level.
Both Tinsman and Sterling believe the right to court-martial protects soldiers from retaliation by commanders who control the Article 15 process, acting as the proverbial judge, jury, and executioner. 13 Investigates learned National Guard units abide by their home state's set of laws, which don't always line up with the federal law, the Uniform Code of Military Justice. We researched the law across the country and found Nevada is one of only 6 states where service members expressly do not have the right to demand a court-martial. By contrast, at least 17 states give service members the absolute right.
Which is, it's the basis for our justice system as Americans, not even just military justice.
13 states are conditional. In Arkansas and Utah, for example, service members can request a court-martial, but it can be turned down by commanders. In 11 states, they can demand a court-martial only if they're facing jail time or restriction to barracks. The law in the remaining states is neutral. In that case, Dr. Sterling says the default goes to the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which guarantees service members the right to trial.
Due process, at the very most basic sense, is you get your day in court.
Tinsman believes Allison Bailey was denied due process by the Nevada National Guard. In his appeal of her case, he noted that the military violated its own disciplinary policy, writing Allison is charged with a variety of egregious offenses for which she has never been counseled. He also claimed the Guard interviewed less than half the number of witnesses it should have.
There were people who had made a statement to the investigating officer who were excluded. I talked to those people, so I know they exist.
And he wrote in the appeal that some soldiers were told either that their testimony wasn't good enough or were pressured to sign a statement written by the investigating officer. The Nevada National Guard told us Adjutant General Berry denied the appeal based on no new evidence or arguments presented. We reached out to our federal lawmakers about Allison's case, which Senator Jackie Rosen called a tragedy. Rosen has requested that the Inspector General of the Department of Defense open a federal investigation into both SFC Bailey's sexual assault allegations and the process of her discharge to get to the bottom of what happened. A spokesperson for Senator Catherine Cortez Masto said she referred the matter to Governor Lombardo and is also calling on the Office of Inspector General to conduct a review. Darcy Spears, 13 Investigates.
With Veterans Day coming up on Saturday, 13 Investigates is continuing guarding the Guardsmen. Thank you for staying with us here on Channel 13, live at 6:30. I'm Joe Mueller.
And I'm Trisha Keene. It's a series that gives service members a voice as we fight for what's right. And after seeing Chief Investigator Darcy Spears' last report about the case of Sergeant First Class Allison Bailey in the Nevada National Guard, another military whistleblower found the courage to speak out.
My first thought was just like shutting myself down and going like, even God wouldn't forgive me for not fighting hard enough to get him off.
A female soldier struggles to describe the trauma she endured in the Nevada National Guard. When we first reported her case in May of 2021, she asked us to protect her identity as she detailed claims about a master sergeant, a man she initially looked up to as a mentor, until things took a dark turn.
And forcing me to touch him in inappropriate places and touching me without my permission.
She says his behavior escalated to assault multiple times in remote northern Nevada locations. With the power dynamic of him being nearly twice her age and several ranks her senior, she says she felt trapped and forced to comply with his advances.
And he took away the knife that he gave me for protection and whispered, "You won't be needing this."
When she finally made the decision to report him in the fall of 2019, she went to leadership in her chain of command.
He basically told me that I wasn't reporting to law enforcement or the SARC, and I had to go meet with him. And when I did, he told me that was consensual.
She says that began a journey of intimidation and retaliation so severe that she was driven to the breaking point.
And so I went to the spot where I was first sexually assaulted by my assailant, and I was going to shoot myself. But the gun wasn't there that day, and that's the only reason I'm here.
She's also here now, revealing her identity for the first time as Senior Airman Elizabeth Smith.
Because command did not take me seriously, another service member is not with us today. So obviously they did not do what they should have.
And does that speak to why you're coming forward and revealing your identity, or what contributed to you making that decision?
So listening to Allison Bailey's story, I felt like I was just reading my story all over again.
As 13 Investigates reported, Allison Bailey's story includes claims of retaliation surrounding her reports of sexual assault by a fellow guardsman. Allison went from model soldier to being kicked out of the military over multiple allegations of misconduct on her part. She died from organ failure due to multiple health issues 6 weeks after she was discharged.
By the military's own numbers, they report that 64% of service members who report a sexual assault are being retaliated against.
Attorney and Army veteran Lindsay Knapp created a group called Combat Sexual Assault. It provides healing services to nearly 1,000 service members and legal help for about 100 clients, including Elizabeth.
She reported that she was sexually assaulted by somebody who outranked her significantly and was her supervisor, no less.
Elizabeth took her allegations to Reno police in November 2019.
She was able to get a civilian protective order where the judge checked the box for sexual assault as the basis.
The Nevada National Guard issued a military protective order against the master sergeant and initially kept the two separated. Reno police ended up closing the case, telling 13 Investigates in 2021 they couldn't find probable cause to file any charges. According to documents from a Reno police report, the master sergeant told a detective the two had an intimate relationship lasting about 6 months, but it was consensual. He stated that there was no rape, no coercion, and rank was not a part of it. The Guard also asked the Office of Complex Investigations to review the case, but that office declined, citing the extensive Reno police investigation. In this statement to 13 Investigates, the Nevada Guard wrote, the Reno Police Department conducted an extensive investigation that led to the drafting of a 633-page report.
What they're trying to do is demonstrate or attempt to demonstrate to the American public that they did a fantastic investigation and that they were so thorough.
But NAP confirms what 13 Investigates discovered after we obtained the report. Nearly half of those 633 pages are duplicates. And here's the kicker. The 253 duplicate pages are location photos, screenshots of banking activity and social media posts, and email threads, nearly all of it collected by Elizabeth and handed over to Reno PD. As Knapp explains, the bulk of the report is made up of her client's own investigation, and she takes issue with the Nevada Guard citing that as thorough police work.
They should be ashamed of themselves, and the American public should see them for exactly what they're doing, and that is misleading them and gaslighting survivors of sexual violence.
When we specifically asked the Guard why they repeatedly cited the report as 633 pages when nearly half was duplicated, they avoided the question, referring us to Reno police instead. In 2021, the Guard told us the Master Sergeant Elizabeth accused received an other than honorable discharge from the military, but the reasons for that were adultery and fraternization. Knapp says that means the Guard effectively took his word over Elizabeth's that the sexual activity was consensual. Elizabeth remained in the Guard.
And that was more scary than the rape itself. Because a rape, you know it's going to end eventually. But the retaliation, you never know when that's going to end. And there's nobody on your side who's able to stop it.
The Nevada Guard has repeatedly told us they properly followed all procedures in Elizabeth's case, and they say the Guard continues to make efforts to protect all service members. But one former insider says the rhetoric does not match the reality. That and more when our story continues tomorrow on Channel 13 News at 6. Darcy Spears, 13 Investigates.
Whistleblowers who claim they're victims of military sexual trauma often tell similar stories of retaliation and intimidation in the wake of reporting assaults. Thank you for staying with us here on Channel 13 live at 6:30. I'm Joe Mueller.
And I'm Trisha Keene. Well, tonight, as Veterans Day approaches, 13 Chief Investigator Darcy Spears continues guarding the Guardsmen with more former service members inspired by our series coming forward to voice their concerns.
I wanted to come out because command isolates you so much. It makes you feel that hopelessness.
Senior Airman Elizabeth Smith says her isolation and hopelessness faded after hearing about Sergeant First Class Allison Bailey.
So listening to Allison Bailey's story, I felt like I was just reading my story all over again.
Both women reported sexual assault. In both cases, law enforcement investigated and did not file charges, citing insufficient evidence, and both say they were retaliated against by the Nevada National Guard.
So it's important that we come out and show our faces and support each other, because the Guard doesn't want us to find each other.
The Guard tells 13 Investigates it does want service members to come forward and encourages reporting in many ways.
Over the course of the last 3 years, the Nevada National Guard has taken proactive steps over the course of that time to combat sexual assault in the force and hold accountable people for their actions.
Nevada Guard spokesperson Captain Emerson Marcus says that includes this memo of understanding effective January 2021 that requires all sexual assault allegations to be referred to the Nevada Department of Public Safety. He also says the Guards supported a revision in state law with a stronger definition of sexual assault.
We've also launched many awareness campaigns. This has been something the Department of Defense has taken very seriously, and we have, in our awareness campaign, I will say that we have seen an uptick in reports.
Other insiders we spoke to say that's a double-edged sword.
I left the military as a major.
Marilyn Burden worked in the Wyoming National Guard's Equal Opportunity Office for half her career, with posters and flyers in every building, on military websites, social media, and through email blasts. Marilyn says service members are encouraged to speak up, but in her experience, the rhetoric does not match the reality.
Some of the people in senior leader positions were a little bit toxic. People coming forward or taking things outside their unit was then a threat to their authority or a threat to their ego, and then they would retaliate against the member.
Over time, she saw a pattern.
The series is deny, delay, deflect, confuse, or cover up.
Frustrated with the culture, she eventually left the Wyoming Guard. Leaders there have not responded to our request for comment. Marilyn initially reached out to 13 Investigates after our reporting on Allison's case. Allison died from organ failure due to multiple health issues 6 weeks after she was discharged from the Nevada Guard.
The portion of the story of Sergeant First Class Bailey's story that just really ripped my heart apart was that her sons found her, and her death, she left behind 2 boys. I was appointed as a victim advocate for a soldier, a female officer who had been raped while she was deployed to Iraq. She ultimately ended up committing suicide,
leaving 3 teenage boys behind. Elizabeth understands the depth of that despair.
They made me feel so hopeless that I wanted to kill myself.
But she was able to fight through that to continue her career despite what her attorney, Lindsay Knapp, calls ongoing retaliation. Knapp cites this email from the Nevada Guard as an example. Elizabeth was told she would be granted an expedited transfer to another state's guard.
And it took more than 2 years for us to get her out of that unit safely.
But after our story aired in 2021, the email to Knapp states the transfer will now be processed as an interstate transfer and is unrelated to the unsubstantiated sexual assault. This change is due to your comments mischaracterizing the expedited transfer during the news story.
They withdrew it. And then after that story aired, in addition to retaliating against Liz, they're like, well, let's just go after the attorney as well. Let's see how hard we can hit. And then they threatened to file a bar complaint against me. 2 years later, no bar complaint has been made.
Knapp encourages victims to make their voices heard and hopes Nevada cases like Elizabeth's and Allison's encourage a critical, nationwide look at the issue of sexual assault and retaliation in the National Guard.
So if we're looking at the Nevada National Guard very narrowly and not taking into account their brothers and sisters to the left, then we're not actually addressing the entire problem. We're looking at, a broken arm without understanding that there's a gunshot wound to the chest.
As for Elizabeth, she wants her courage in coming forward to motivate others.
And that's what needs to happen, is that we need to stop being afraid of our truths and come out and share that this is what's happening with the Guard.
As we have for each of our reports, we again asked the Nevada Guard for an on-camera interview with its top general, Andra Berry, but that was denied. They instead provided a statement addressing several of our questions. You can read that along with this story on our website at ktnv.com/guardingtheguardsmen. Darcy Spears, 13 Investigates.